Louise had just placed her baby down a moment ago and suddenly, he was nowhere in sight. Was it just her new mother's mind playing tricks on her? Then, from the lounge, she heard the unmistakable sound of her baby's cooing. She hurried into the room and saw him in someone's arms, both crying and giggling, blissfully unaware of the commotion he had caused. In the warm and welcoming living room of her suburban residence, Louise sat comfortably, her newborn cradled in her arms against a backdrop of gentle lullabies that filled the air with tranquility. With her husband Michael out on errands, she enjoyed a quiet moment alone with their cherished little one. However, an unexpected visit was about to occur. Louise was a loving new mother, her heart as radiant as a midsummer day. She resided in a charming house in Redwood, Alabama, sharing her space with her husband, their newborn son Blake, and her in-laws. Despite the pervading sadness, Louise made sure her father-in-law Jack, who had recently moved in to assist with the baby and provide company, felt both loved and needed. Louise's life was idyllic until her in-laws settled into her quaint home. The house, filled with the delightful sounds of her newborn Blake, also housed her 88-year-old father-in-law Jack, a man whose stories echoed from a distant past, and her lively mother-in-law Patrice, who held on to life with zest despite the cramped conditions of their three-bedroom home. As she looked down at Blake's serene face, Louise felt a deep appreciation for Jack's presence and support since the baby's arrival. Jack, with his gentle demeanor and readiness to help, was a source of great comfort. Louise treasured the joyful times when Jack engaged with Blake, their home resonating with laughter and warmth. Initially, she appreciated Jack's involvement as it not only gave her time to focus on her work but also ensured Blake received the attention he needed. However, as weeks passed, Louise began to observe a shift in Jack's demeanor. He increasingly clung to Blake for extended periods, almost as if he couldn't let go. At first, Louise thought this was merely a tender bond forming between grandfather and grandson. Yet she soon suspected a deeper, troubling undercurrent. One day, while Jack was holding Blake, Louise sensed a strange odor lingering in the air and her concern grew. With furrowed brows and a cautious approach, she confronted Jack, trying to hide her worry so as not to upset her father-in-law, who had always been a generous financial supporter. Standing before him, she gently inquired, "Jack, is everything okay?" Her tone was careful, aiming not to alarm Jack, who seemed detached from reality. Jack responded with a strained smile, asserting that all was well and he was merely bonding with Blake. His demeanor remained formal, a man who disliked being questioned. As time went on, Louise's discomfort only intensified. She caught Jack making unsettling remarks about Blake's resemblance to his father, Michael, with a hint of malice in his voice. These comments, often made to his wife Patrice, who dismissed them irritably, seemed to reveal hidden resentments as the couple aged. Initially, Louise tried to dismiss these comments as mere signs of fatigue from handling a newborn. Yet, her worries escalated, especially when considering the doctor's advice against holding the baby excessively. Advice that was being ignored with Jack's constant handling. The remarks about Blake's paternity grew more frequent and disturbing, chilling Louise to the core. "Perhaps he resembles his real father," Jack would insinuate, leaving Louise rattled by the implications. Louise was plagued by a persistent unease about Jack's odd behavior around Blake. Particularly one evening when Michael was not home. Entering the nursery, she found Jack cradling Blake once more. Enveloped by an ominous silence only punctuated by the steady squeak of the rocking chair. Her suspicion deepened as she observed Jack's intense stare. "You seem to be around Blake quite a lot," Louise remarked, her voice trembling. Jack's expression twisted into a disturbing smile as he replied, "He's just such a unique child. I can't resist." He caressed Blake's forehead in a peculiar manner that made Louise uncomfortable. Louise's apprehension escalated into alarm, and she instinctively grabbed Blake from Jack's arms. "You need to step back, Jack. Blake is our child, not yours," she asserted. Jack's attitude changed immediately. His eyes glinted with hostility and his jaw tightened. "You ought to appreciate that I'm here to assist. I only want what's best for my grandson," he snapped, tossing the blanket to the floor before storming out. That night, as Louise lay in bed, the unsettling confrontation replayed in her mind, reinforcing her fears about Jack's potentially sinister motives. She questioned why he had become so confrontational about the baby, doubting the safety of her son with a man she once believed was trustworthy. The enigma of Jack's behavior kept her awake, fearful of what dark secrets might lurk beneath. Concerned for her son's welfare, Louise tried to maintain a regular schedule for Blake. But Jack frequently picked him up whenever he found him alone in his crib. Pushed to her limits, and then suddenly, there was a smell. Upon entering the room frequently used by Jack and Blake, Louise detected a strange scent that made her uneasy. She approached Jack with concern. "I'm grateful for your assistance with Blake. But is everything all right? There's an odd odor here." Jack gave a nervous laugh and replied, "It's probably just this old cream I've been using on him to keep his skin soft and smooth," showing her a baby-safe herbal lotion containing camphor. Although Louise was initially reassured, doubt continued to gnaw at her. As days turned into nights, Jack's behavior grew more disturbing. He began to make odd remarks about Blake not resembling his son, which Louise initially dismissed as mere confusion from an aging mind. She longed for her husband to return from his business trip to handle the unsettling changes in his father. Driven to her limits, Louise discreetly installed a hidden camera in the living room to monitor Jack's interaction with Blake. Watching the footage, her heart dropped. Jack's mental state fluctuated, at times mistaking Blake for his own son from years past. The video captured poignant moments of Jack applying the same cream to Blake that he once used on her late husband as a baby. Tears filled her eyes as she realized Jack was suffering from Alzheimer's disease. A stark contrast to the strong, reliable man he once was. The footage revealed that Jack's mind was unraveling, far beyond mere forgetfulness. It was a painful glimpse into the deteriorating mind of a man who had once been a cornerstone of strength in her family. Unaware of his actions, Jack showed no recognition of his alarming behavior. With compassion, Louise sat next to Jack, taking his shaky hands in hers. "Dad," she said softly, tears rolling down her face. "I understand now. We'll face this together." Jack merely chuckled, oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Jack had little familiarity with his daughter-in-law, and each day presented a new struggle for him. Louise recognized that it was crucial for her father-in-law to seek a medical evaluation from the hospital. Amidst the pain and confusion, a new chapter unfolded for Louise and Jack. One where love and understanding would be their guides through the complexities of Alzheimer's. Together, they would traverse the intricate labyrinth of memories, cherishing moments of clarity and finding comfort in their shared family history. During her son's absence, Louise became the pillar of support Jack needed. As Louise balanced her roles as a mother and a professional, she observed Jack's growing desire to spend time with her young son, Blake. Initially, this appeared as a tender act of a grandfather cherishing his grandson. However, as time went on, Louise's comfort turned to concern as Jack held onto Blake for hours, reluctant to let him go, wondering if she might be misinterpreting the situation, and considering it might be harmful to Blake. Louise decided it was time to address it. "Dad, it's wonderful to see you bonding with Blake, but I need to spend time with him as well," she said softly. Lost in his world, the old man continued narrating stories to Blake, treating him as if he were his own son. Tears welled up in Louise's eyes as she realized the gravity of Jack's condition. Jack smiled, a trace of perplexity in his gaze. "He doesn't look like my son," he stated enigmatically, leaving Louise confused. He pointed at Blake's face, his aged, trembling finger indicating the boy's nose and chin. "This isn't how my boy looked." From infancy, he had always repeated that Louise was getting increasingly frustrated with the nonsensical words that Jack was uttering, growing concerned for her son's health. With heightened vigilance, Louise began to watch Jack more intensely as the distinct scent of a unique cream wafted through the room whenever he cradled Blake. Her curiosity morphed into deep concern when Jack began to voice disturbing remarks, claiming Blake was not his child, implicitly accusing Louise of infidelity. At her breaking point, Louise took decisive action by subtly installing a camera in the nursery to get to the bottom of Jack's odd conduct. Upon reviewing the footage, a mix of shock and sorrow overwhelmed her. It became clear that for Jack, interacting with baby Blake was his way of revisiting his youth, telling his old tales to his grandson, oblivious to the extensive time they spent together. The footage highlighted Jack's battle with Alzheimer's, showing moments when he confused Blake for his own son, reenacting memories from days gone by. He even dressed the baby in an old outfit that once belonged to her husband, covering him in the same cream he had used decades earlier. Tears streamed down Louise's cheeks as she watched Jack gently care for Blake's skin, mirroring the way he once cared for her husband. Faced with such innocence yet burdened by responsibility, Louise felt torn. She called her husband to view the unsettling videos. Fortuitously, Michael was home that week, enabling her to update him on everything he had missed. As they watched together, their emotions fluctuated wildly, ultimately agreeing that Jack needed professional care. Louise, her voice resolute with determination, announced that Michael was still grappling with the realization that his father had changed significantly. Together with his mother, Patrice, who was equally silent and shocked, they sought expert advice and arranged for Jack to be admitted to a specialized care facility. It was a poignant moment for them as they watched Jack, the patriarch who had once been their anchor, transition into this new phase of his life. They pondered whether Jack was aware of the changes, as he seemed to think they were simply going on a vacation. In the care facility, Jack experienced fleeting moments of solace amidst his confusion. thanks to the compassionate staff who catered to his needs. His wife, Patrice, was accommodated in a room next to his, ensuring they both maintained their privacy. Louise and her husband made regular visits, bringing along photographs and stories from their lives to share with Jack. Despite their efforts, Jack yearned to hold his grandson, Blake, in his arms. As time went on, Blake grew, oblivious to the complex situations unfolding around him. The Taylor family preserved countless photographs of Blake with his grandfather, capturing their connection. Even as Jack's memories began to dim, the affection and care he had once lavished on his family remained, a lasting tribute to a relationship that transcended the constraints of time and memory. When Blake matured, he would always understand the depth of his grandfather's love for him. After watching the story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.